guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new revenge content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Pushy Signature Gatherer, Sure, I'll Sign. I live in a state with constant signature gathering efforts as a result of our much-abused citizen initiative system. Most signature gatherers are pushy, but in an accustomed sort of way. You see one ahead, you drop your shades, take a phone call, anything to avoid them. For the most part they acquiesce, but not this one time. My kids and I were downtown, walking from the bus stop to one of the normal multiplexes that typically host popular kids' films. It was a nice night, and we were having a good time. Transiting a large public plaza, I spy a chubby, middle-aged male signature gatherer standing near the corner ahead. The gods of timing are not with us, and we are stopped by the "Don't Walk" sign. This is clearly his method, the captive audience. In all honesty, I can't blame him. We'd be stuck at the crosswalk with him for 20s, no more. As soon as we stop, he launches into his spiel. After a moment or two, I politely tell him not tonight, man, and return my attention to my kids. He immediately replies, no, tonight, and pokes me in the chest with the clipboard. I am what Cedric the Entertainer called a grown-ass man. Nobody's going to try and make me look like a chump, let alone in front of my kids. My first reaction upon being poked in the chest by this tool was to slap the clipboard out of his fat little hands. However, to do so would be to set what I knew to be an inappropriately violent and confrontational personal standard for public behavior for my kids. So in the words of Orange Juice Jones, instead, I chilled. I did, however, happen to have a black sharp eye in the leg pocket of my Carhartts. I looked the offending a-hole in the eye and said, sure, I'll sign, give it to me. Rather than use the ballpoint attached to the clipboard by a cunning array of knotted rubber bands, I opted for my own pen, found the first open signature blank, and wrote "Duck You" in giant black letters, the length of the signature entry. The whole episode had eaten up our wait time at this point. The moment the walk signal turned, I handed the clipboard back to Mr. Pushy and stepped into the crosswalk. Talking and laughing with my kids, I never looked back, and they were never aware of the time their dad rolled some instant karma on a douchebag who tried to harsh the family buzz. Next one is titled, There Goes the Neighborhood. A fun story for you all. When I was young, high school age, I lived with my family in a middle-upper-class suburb. Everybody in the community got along, and for the most part, life there was quiet, peaceful, and enjoyable. That is, of course, for one major exception of the house next to mine, which was rented by Mr. Public Nuisance, PN. Be it drug/alcohol-fueled parties, drug busts, and constant eviction notices, there was rarely more than a week that went by without some sort of police involvement. To put PN into perspective, he would have failed to get a job being a dirtbag, simply because he was overqualified. One fateful night, however, the neighborhood got even. It was about 11 p.m. on a spring night. Myself and family are attempting to sleep. However, the party bumping from the other side of the fence is making sleep, or even clear thought all but impossible. Police had already been called, volumes had been turned down, then turned back up again as soon as the police car had pulled around the corner. I crawled out of bed and made my way out to the living room. The front door was open, and my father was standing out front in conference with the neighborhood pajama committee. They dispersed and my father came back inside. I asked him what was happening. Just be quiet and follow me. I followed my father out of the house into the backyard, where he opened up the valves for our hoses. They bulged under the pressure. He handed me one of the nozzles and whispered on my command. We both walked over to the fence and took aim. My father waited, checking his watch, until finally his arm dropped. Streams of water appeared from all around and jettisoned into PN yard. Sounds of drunken partying turned to screams of shock. Now would probably be a good time to note that the neighborhood water supply was winter runoff, which usually sat just above freezing temperatures. In the cool spring air, it was probably quite uncomfortable. Screams of shock were eventually overpowered by a yell of rage. PN had lost it and was screaming half-slurred expletives. We shut the water off, and somebody yelled back sorry, thought it was the dog. A few minutes later, the neighborhood pajama committee had recommuned and were giggling among each other. PN was standing in the nude in front of his house, continuing to yell at the top of his lungs. At that moment, a police car pulled around the corner. Long story short, PN was taken to jail on charges of providing alcohol to minors, indecent exposure, lewd acts with a girl under the age of 18, and a slew of other alcohol/drug charges. He pleaded guilty to many of the charges and evaded jail time. However, because he now had a record of sexual assault, he was forced to move away from our community and the many schools that were nearby. Next one is titled, New Mailbox, $20. New car, $10K. My best friend and I are both sons of police officers. His dad was a highway patrolman and mine was a deputy sheriff and detective. They are both retired now and living comfortably. This story happened shortly after we both graduated high school about 15 years ago. My buddy and I grew up in a rural area and for the most part was very quiet and we rarely had any problems. That changed when one weekend morning my friend's family discovered their mailbox smashed and scattered along the road in front of their house. They chalked it up to a hit and run, gathered up the mail, bought and posted a new mailbox and went on with life. The next weekend, it happened again. Flash back a few months before my buddy's dad retired. He decided he didn't want to quit working, so he went down to the local trade college and became certified as a welder. After the second time their mailbox was destroyed, my buddy called me over to his house and we all went to work. Buddy and his dad did the welding and cutting, I did the grinding, and his mom, who is a fantastic artist, did the painting. Throw in 2 bags of cement, 7 feet of steel pipe, and the necessary rebar, and you can probably guess where this is going. We built an all-steel reinforced mail bunker and set it in with 3.5 feet of concrete and road base. Remember my friend's mom, who's a really good artist. She painted it so that it looked like it was made out of wood. The steel post looked incredibly realistic, even up close, let alone at night, driving a car 4 to 5 miles an hour. We posted the box at dinner and I went home. A couple weeks went by and bingo. My friend called me around 7:00 a.m. on a Sunday morning and told me to get over to his house ASAP. When I came around the turn to their house, there was in full glory. A 92 Pontiac Grand Prix wrapped around a steel pole almost to the passenger compartment. The car was abandoned, but all the necessary information needed for an arrest was there. It took a couple of days to track the owner down, and sure enough, he confessed. However, there was also a half-empty bottle of Canadian Host and beer cans all over the back seat, so we got an open container charge too. At the cost of a tow truck and the medical bills for smashing his stupid face into his steering wheel, and that criminal mischief charge added up real quick. I later found out my friend's little brother stole the guy's CD book too. Realizing the mail bunker could get someone hurt, we repainted it after fixing it to something more conspicuous. Edit. Time to add some context. Look, we know what we did could be potentially dangerous to others. We're not idiots. However, when we placed the new box and pole, it was well within my friend's property line and off the road. Their family owns a farm and has the acreage to spare. My friend's dad cleared off a large area with his tractor, packed the ground down, and added a layer of road base. He made it large enough that the postal worker could park and be completely off the road to access the mailbox. Also, in order to get to the family's driveway, you had to drive through a soft turn. Anybody driving so fast that they might accidentally hit the box would roll their vehicle way before they would get near the box. Assuming people are following the posted speed limit and not a complete moron, there would be no way to hit this box unless you went out of your way to do so. Next one is titled, Don't Ignore My Dad. My dad was a great guy. Pretty laid back, but sharp-witted with professional-level ball-buster skills. He took everything in stride until you crossed him. This is a tale about one of the poor souls who did. My dad lived across the street from a guy who worked in the same mill as Dad, so he would give Dad a ride to and from work and come over when there was nothing else going on just to hang out. Drank Dad's beer, ate Dad's snacks, what have you. Anyway, Dad quite loudly questioned a company policy that disregarded a state holiday and they canned him. Dad was annoyed but figured that's how things work sometimes and took the unemployment comp happily. He went and informed the guy that he wouldn't need a ride that afternoon because he had been sacked. The guy made a weird face and said that was fine. Dad made a mental note of the weird look and went home to start his vacation. Anyway, Dad had been outside playing with my nephew when the guy got home. Dad gave him a friendly wave. It was not returned. In fact, the guy didn't even look in his direction. Dad figured maybe something else had happened at work that day that was distracting and blew it off as nothing. But the next day he didn't wave again, just locked his car up and hurried into his house like he wasn't even there. So the day after that, Dad called him and was once again ignored. Dad was starting to get pretty miffed at this point. Why was this guy being such a dick now? Because they didn't work at the same place anymore? That's dumb as hell. After a few days of this, Dad actually went up to his car and tried to talk to him, but alas, he was still ignoring him. With the numerous blow-offs wearing on his mind, Dad came up with his revenge. You see, Dad was a drinker. Not a violent, mean drinker, but a daily beer-drinking guy. And so was the guy across the street. So much so that he always had a few beers on the way to work, at 7 in the morning while driving. Dad never said anything because he grew up during a time when you could drink a bottle of whiskey while driving, and the only thing someone would say to you was to not throw it out the window. But he was definitely going to say something now. About an hour before the guy left for work, Dad called the non-emergency police line. He told them that there would be someone leaving their house at 5 of 7, not only with a buzz on, but with a beer in their lap while driving. He told them where he was leaving from and what direction he was going in. The dispatcher asked him if he was serious, and Dad said, and I quote, like ducking cancer. At 10 to 7, Dad sat at the kitchen table and waited to see if anything would come of his little tip. He saw the guy come out of his house with a few beers right on time. He heard the car start up, saw him pull out of his parking space, and then heard a siren whoop twice. Dad smiled and went out on the front stoop to watch the show. And it was a pretty good one, too. Apparently, the guy had been busted for DUI a few times, so he was instantly arrested. The car was impounded, and he never saw the guy again. One time, when he was recounting the story to my sister's friend, I laughed and said, "Dad, you're a snitch." He looked over at me, shrugged, and said he should have just said hi. Next one is titled, How My Dad Dealt with Student Neighbors Who Parked in Our Yard. This dates back to 1992, when I lived with my parents in a university town. We used to have students live next door and a little downhill from us, and they'd continually park their cars inside our property near a dodgy fence between our properties. Their place was full of junk and only had one accessible driveway where one of the longer-term students would always park. Dad was a lawn-proud man, and while he was incredibly patient with these guys and would ask them repeatedly to move their cars, he hit breaking point one weekend. There was a big race in town. Half a dozen visiting student guest shitty cars ended up in our lawn, and he went around to protest, saying it had gone beyond ridiculous, especially in wet weather when it'd be likely to damage his lawn all the more. They promised, like they always did, that they'd get the cars out and not park there ever again, but hey, the race was on. They all wanted to watch it and have a decent Sunday, and they'd leave them there until the race was over. As I mentioned, our backyard was uphill from theirs, and part way through the race it really started bucketing down. Dad didn't show any outward anger, but he went into town, came back with a few bottles of dishwashing liquid, and coated the whole lawn in the stuff. Come evening, some of the guys needed to move their cars, and when they got to the downhill slope to go out our driveway, found they couldn't steer or brake. Two made it out without much damage, but the third slid sideways, got onto the steeper part of the lawn, and went straight through the fence and into one of the other students' cars and pushed it sideways into the house. Total damage: 4 student cars with dents, 1 with busted front suspension, 1 wall of the student rental totaled, a bunch of arrogant students kicked out, and a few skid marks on Dad's lawn. Total cost to my dad: $4 in dishwashing liquid, a few weeks' lawn regrowth, and a brand new fence shared with the new neighbors, who were pretty decent people. Dad's response to the police asking about the frothy crap on the lawn: white oil kills bugs. Next one is titled, I Seek Petty Revenge for Those Who Cannot Seek It for Themselves. I watch a young boy sometimes for his parents. I know the family well, and they drop the kid off at my house on the way out to date night, shopping, whatever. Friends of the family, some out of business, just it to be nice kind of thing. I have a big yard with pond and woods, essentially a paradise for a kid to play in. He catches frogs, builds forts, whatever. Last summer, he picked a bundle of dead dandelions, put them in a pile, and proceeded to whack them with a big stick, basically like hitting a golf ball with a club. This was on the far side of the property downwind from my neighbor near the property line. The old bat comes scampering across her yard and starts shouting at this little kid. Not asking him to stop, not correcting him, not teaching him, etc. Like verbally abusing the little guy because she was scared of weeds and crap popping up. Last weekend, I was at Home Depot and saw their bird feeders. I bought the cheapest one they had with a big bag of seed and set it up on my shed, which is about 10 feet from her garden. She should have a nice patch of millet to weed next year. The speed she moves, thinking it should keep her occupied most of the summer. Enjoy that. Don't yell at little kids. Last one is titled, Please enjoy your solid water. At my work, we offer free cups of water to anyone, even if they're not a paying customer. They just have to be a small cup. This is for two reasons. Large cups are significantly most expensive with stock loss, and the water dispenser is manual and slow. If we fill up the large cup, we're literally standing there for a minute or so pushing a button. This is really annoying and impacts service time. So my coworker serves a customer who asks for 3 large waters. Because she's new, she puts them through. I make 3 small waters and let her know as I'm passing that we only do small waters. When I go to hand the customer the waters, he starts kicking up a fuss that he always gets large waters from here, etc. Naturally, we are in the middle of a lunch rush and he's throwing a tantrum in the pickup area, so my manager just rolls her eyes and tells me to get the larges. Okay. I go back to the drink station and fill 3 large cups completely to the brim with ice. Then I top them up with the water from the 3 small cups. He actually got less liquid in the large cups overall, but hey, it's all water. Some's just a bit more solid than the rest. Thanks for listening.